Hello, everyone. Happy to see all of you at our new episode of Fintech Garden Podcast. It's me, Dumitru Kondra, CEO of NovaFin, and my co-host, Igor Tomic. Hello, Igor.
Hi, Dumitru.
Both of us, we have today a very interesting guest. His name is Dennis Vinta, Chief Security Officer for Boerse Stuttgart Group and CTO for Boerse Stuttgart Digital. Hello, Dennis.
Hi, Dima. Hi, Igor. Nice to meet you.
Today's topic is about security. It's a topic that we touched not so often into our podcast. So we decided to invite Dennis because he's the guy who knows a lot about this. He will discuss today about business cases, about why security is very important, cybersecurity is very important, why cybersecurity is a part of a core. But before this, Dennis, tell a little bit about yourself, about the company where you're working, just to make an introduction for our listeners and watchers.
I'm Dennis, as you already mentioned. I'm working for Boerse Stuttgart for 1.5 years now, a little bit more than 1.5 years. Boerse Stuttgart is the second biggest stock exchange in Germany and the sixth biggest stock exchange in Europe. I'm primarily responsible for the digital business, which means that's the crypto business Boerse Stuttgart Group offers. There's the Bison app out there, which is a pretty well-known brand in a German-speaking country. We are also offering custody for cryptocurrencies, and of course, for all the trades that are done through our systems, and a broker system in the back that we also offer to institutional clients.
Doing a lot of things from one single chair, one single table is all the time very challenging. By the way, this is why we invited you today, because we know that working with crypto, working digital bourse, it's very important to pay a lot of attention about security. A lot of people currently are facing thinking about that exists different threats for cybersecurity. One is like post-quantum cryptography. Other people say that, everything will be okay. So we now need to focus, for example, on current security issues. Exists a group of people who say that it's very important to keep an attention to the customers and to make them aware about cybersecurity when they are using our digital products or our fintech products. I wanted to dig a little bit into this topic of customers as a part of security, cybersecurity actions, how a customer can be a strong asset for a fintech product, a fintech company, for gaining some information and ideas and enhancing the cybersecurity. And from another side, it can be a threat also. Dennis, what do you think about the fact that customer can be also an asset and a threat for cybersecurity of one or another fintech product?
There is this very old saying that, security is only as strong as the weakest link. So everyone knows this. A lot of actual security, or like the quality of your security, is linked to the behavior of people. Now, customers are usually people. At least there are like people working for your customers if it's institutional ones. People are basically the one important aspect in security, in my opinion. Besides, you can build up security tooling. You can build up like all the observability that you see what is happening in your systems, all the alerting. If you don't manage to educate your customers or also your employees in how to behave or what to look out for and what the important behaviors are in order to keep things safe, you're actually failing. And this goes in both directions. If you do this well, the individuals will basically really help you also to like keep your system safe and keep your business safe, and also keep themselves, of course, protected from damage. Because this is basically also the core of everything that we are doing. We want to basically manage the risks out there through sane security concepts, through powerful security concepts. Actually, it's really about like educating people and making sure that they really know what the do's and don'ts are in the daily business.
Usually when developing security workflows or security frameworks, cybersecurity frameworks, most of the times, as far as I saw, the biggest accent is put on human factor and human errors, that possibly someone can social engineer it and someone can just disguise some information without even understanding that that person is participating in such kind of actions. As far as I saw, the biggest part of cyber attacks includes the social engineering, includes the fact that someone has to make a mistake. How, based on your experience and your practice, even at Boerse Stuttgart, how do you you're working with this risk that someone can make a mistake, a human factor mistake?
Maybe one step back. So security is a holistic thing. You need to think about multiple layers in which there might be threats emerging. And that could be through insecure systems. It could be, as you mentioned, and that is oftentimes the case, through human error. And fraudsters or people who want to exploit basically the fact that some people are not entirely aware of the secure processes or behaviors, they usually aim for people. And you see this quite often when you look into the Google ads that you sometimes see that are actually like fraudster ads that are just, paid with a lot of money just to make sure that they're landing on top of a well-known brand. So for example, last year, was it last year? No, it was 2024 when Trump was elected, right? Just a day or two after Trump was elected, the crypto markets just went insane. We saw there was so much pressure in the market. There was so many people were trading. And the Bison app that we have is, like, as mentioned earlier, is pretty known in Germany. And we saw a spike in fraudster Google ads that were basically just trying to get above the usual URL, the Bison app URL, and that led people to fraudster websites that were actually just, trying to get the credentials from our customers. And that is something where we had to really up our game, in the course of just a day or two when we saw that, in order to automatically have Google remove these fraudster ads. These are just common practices that you see out there from criminals that try to actually exploit that people are not really paying attention, and that also humans in general are oftentimes not really capable to read all the details of a fraudulent URL that just looks a little bit like as if it was the right one, but it is not the right one. And this is basically where I think a lot of effort goes in nowadays from multiple companies. If you want to make sure that your product is secure, you need to also make sure that you can react to these situations where the education of your customers, and that's just also a natural thing. You will never reach everyone. There are just not people out there who are all capable to entirely understand all this complexity. The world became so complex in the last couple of years, and it's so complicated to do the right things nowadays. That also applies to all the security topics, and it also comes with the risk of people actually really clicking on the wrong link or believing the wrong person who's calling them and telling them, hey, I'm from this and that company, and you need to immediately move your funds from here to there because it's really important. Otherwise, you'll be in a bad place, right?
Most of the times when I have to plan the activities for example, I know it's a strategic meeting for the company and we have to plan the activities for the next year or quarter, wherever. We all the time discuss about, unfortunately, not a big portion of time we dedicated to this, but at least a workshop for 1 hour or two we dedicate about cybersecurity, about threats. And we all the time try to mitigate them in advance. We try to plan them earlier to think what kind of risk we have, what can happen. Of course, we're planning some security measures because there's a part of product or technical roadmap of a product you have to develop. And all the time I was struggling to understand how early we have to plan some security measures, how early we have to think about security threats. And as much as I tried, most of the times, and I saw that a lot of companies doing the same thing, 20% of the actions regarding cybersecurity are planned in advance. Everything else, 80%, are just a reaction to something that really is happening because it's more easier. It's very hard to plan. And from another side, when the cybersecurity chief information officer or chief security officer is coming to the board saying, hey, we need to do this, this, and this, and this, and he or she can come with a lot of initiatives, well structured, well planned, here appears the topic but where is the line between the business needs and the business needs, the first and primordial business needs to make money. So where is the line between making money and investing in cybersecurity? I never found a good answer for this. Maybe you found it. Maybe you saw it somehow, somewhere. So I would be happy to hear your opinion on this and your experience on this.
A couple of weeks back, we had a cybersecurity workshop with the entire team. And I asked our chief revenue officer and our chief sales officer to actually kick the meeting off, to tell us, how do you envision the business to look like in 5 years from now? And based on this information, we were planning or working on a strategy for cybersecurity for the next 2 years, 3 years, basically to have the direction, to understand how the landscape will look like, the product landscape will look like, and how they assume the markets will develop in order to take the right decisions on how to do security. So for me, it is security or technology in general is not an end in itself. We don't do this just because it's cool doing it. We do it because we need to support the business. and we need to protect the business in case of security. And from that perspective, there is always a connection. What you're talking about is basically threat modeling. You're thinking, you look at a current situation and you try to understand what are the risks from a security perspective that could emerge. And then you try to basically take measures in case that you see that you have gaps somewhere so that you can't really mitigate it in a way as you want to do it. But this is an ongoing exercise. For me, and actually I think for like all the security teams, people out there, it is important to make sure that you're doing like exercises like threat modeling actually more or less on a daily basis, or that you have like processes in place where the team is repeatedly going through the core processes of the company, and that they ask themselves how, like, put the Batman cape on and think about like, how could we break this, what we currently put in place? Is there any other way around this? From that perspective, it is like a strong connection, I think, between business and all security.
And I was listening the story about the customers, the training, the threat modeling. And I'm always trying to put like the security maybe split in a few levels, like hygienic one, because you do the things not because you want, because you have to do. And in this case, I'm pretty interested your comparison for the industry for the 10 years ago and right now, because you have a lot of experience. And as we talked before, you joined information security a long time ago. And I think it would be important for our listeners and viewers to understand what it actually means right now, the cybersecurity in modern setup. Are we talking about clouds? Are we talking about the specific tools or processes? So can you maybe slice high level the layers and how the security is achieved in those layers for the digital products nowadays?
The biggest difference between the technology world or the security world nowadays and 10 years ago is, of course, you have a way more complex system in the meantime that you need to take care of. I think many companies nowadays are leveraging SaaS technologies, which means within these SaaS technologies, you have specific roles and accesses and accounts, and someone needs to take care of this. And you need to have basically like a full transparency on like, how are these accounts connected? Who can log in where? Is this person still in the right team to have the permission, actually, from a company perspective, to have the permission to log into this tool? Or did that person carry basically a permission still with them because someone missed to take the permission from them? You have a way more complex system nowadays that is way harder actually to keep track of. I think this is one of the biggest changes in the last 10 years, that the overall complexity of the systems that people are interacting with just increased significantly. Now with AI as well, people are just putting all the data, all the company data into AI, even though if you tell them, please not do, but I'm convinced a lot of people out there just do it because they're not aware of the risks that it takes, or the risks that they take if by doing this, by basically most likely or potentially also sharing company secrets and maybe also security relevant secrets. So from that perspective, I would say also like in view of the changes that we see in the world, the political changes, the uncertainty that just increased in the meantime, the role of security is such. Also, if I look into how management 10 years ago was looking at security, and how managers nowadays, when I talk with them, look at security, that also changed in terms of that people get more aware of how important it is to make an effort to understand what is required from a security perspective to protect the company. And that is like, I think you can see this in politics, you can see this in business, that there is a huge shift also going into the security awareness, into like more people raising the question, what do we need to do in order to be still relevant in 3 or 4 years from now? In particular, like if you're working in an environment where it's about money and where it's about health, like, all these very critical, like defense and all these things, of course, that's like a natural thing. But you're working in industries like this, it's even more critical because one mistake could potentially actually mean that you can just shut the door, lock the door, and just basically write off the business. So there is not a lot of margin for errors nowadays, and you need to be ready for this. And I think this is something that you can see that this awareness increased in the meantime in many people.
Currently, defense is not only classical defense we had, for example, 5 years ago. Today, defense, also social defense, means also taking care about your health system in the country, national health system, because there's a lot of databases about people, about their DNA analysis, about the blood analysis, which you can cover a huge amount of information. So it's the same. Like I honestly see this health is a part of defense. Just mentioning this because you said it, like you separate like in separate streams, which is also very logical. I'm participating in cybersecurity workshops with C-level colleagues regarding like what we have to do in that project or in another product. All the time, there is this discussion about the roles. You also mentioned this, like we are now currently using a lot of us CS software as a service, and there is a big need and a big accent of role access. There is a big accent on separating who is responsible for what, the permissions, the flags you have to install in different side. And all the time, I observed this trend for at least 4 or 5 years. People start to trust so much technology that technology can be a good firewall in defending, say, the security of a company, data security, and so on. Because they say like, hey, humans are not perfect. Humans can be social engineered. So let's mix it with some human behavior, some human controllers with automatization, with technology. And to be honest, at the beginning, I was very much pro on this. I was thinking the same. But years passed, and I saw that it's still better to use humans as much more, not only like controllers, but to use humans much more as defenders and to less automatize some of the things. Because code itself is written by humans. Well, we already are in the incipient stage when code is written by another code, but still code is written by the humans. Someone premeditatedly can insert some windows to crack the window somewhere in the code, and it can open the doors. I still think that humans are the best defenders of cybersecurity, not automatization. But I still see companies that are still rely on automatization, rely on technology. What's your vision here? What do you think where is this mix between and the line between human engagement and automatization engagement in the cybersecurity?
This is one of the core topics that kept me busy for the last 10 years, right? How do you ensure the integrity of code written somehow? From a compliance perspective or from a regulatory perspective, this is exactly also what we at Boerse Stuttgart are required to do. We have teams who are building products, and these products are software products. And we somehow need to make sure that no one is building a backdoor in, as you mentioned it. And that also applies basically for all the security processes, for all the operational processes where people need to do certain things over the course of a business day, where you also need to make sure that they are doing the right things and that you have transparency in case that they're not doing it, and controls also to detect in case that something is not going as planned. I think there is, when you go to the extremes, when you go towards like only humans, you're making a mistake, because humans make mistakes. Humans are far from perfect, and humans are very behavioral beings, which basically means I've been doing this for 20 times. And after like 20 times doing the same thing, the 21st, second and third time, I won't do it like with the same attention as the first couple of times. And this is where error sneaks in. For automation, of course, I mean, code is only as good as the people who wrote it. But what you can do is, of course, that you come up with strategies to increase the quality of the code. And this is usually done, ideally, nowadays, through a mix of automation and review from humans. And I also think that this won't go away with AI. It will shift dramatically in the way how to do it, because the amount of code written by AI is insane. Also, like no human will be able to actually understand like the entirety of it. So you also need to basically enhance the capability of the people checking code written by AI. I'm just like talking about this because you mentioned it. And I think it's also a very interesting thing. You need to basically enhance the capabilities of the people who are checking the code by technology again. Something that helps them breaking down all the changes and grasping whether the change was actually implemented that was initially intended also to be done. So from that perspective, I think you need to mix it up. You need to make sure that automation at first helps you to define a standard. Automation helps you to always do the same steps over and over again. And if you do it often enough, you will also identify errors or mistakes in the code, in the process that gives you the automation. As soon as you have this at a certain quality, you have the means within this, and this I'm talking about basically, you can think of it as a software development process, right? Someone writes code, someone needs to review it, and we need to make sure that when it ends up somewhere in production, that is still the code that was initially coded and reviewed. And all this is basically something where you can use multiple different technologies to ensure the integrity, to like use cryptography, for example, to make sure that you have still the same code, even if it's like like thousands of lines. You can create a hash, and you will make sure that at that point in time, when you're calculating the hash and you compare it at a later point in time, nothing in the code has changed. That's for sure. Like that's a mathematical guarantee. And from that perspective, I think the only option that you have with this code can be erroneous. Humans make mistakes. You need to basically balance this out and continue to also improve and control and improve these processes. And as a last thought to this, I think technological like automation is something that I think is really necessary. Otherwise, other people will do it and companies will actually go out of business. You need to like go with capabilities that are out there in the market. If you don't do it, you will lose at some point. At the same time, you need humans to control this. You need humans to think about how to deal with this technology and how to ensure then again that we actually understand what is happening within there.
I'm with you with automation. And I think in this case, if we're talking about people, the nature is to strategize. Like if we give the operational routine same task that's potential issue with the quality and with the error prone. So computers are better with the repeating the same stuff if it's well strategical like approached. With the security and with the AI, it's pretty interesting. You mentioned that the code will be written by AI and no one will understand. But like, is it really happening in practice? Because if I take a look on the most complex stuff created right now, like operational systems, the hardware, embedded software for the cars, especially that's in Germany. Like if you take a look, companies like Daimler and et cetera, they have a lot of engineering. And I think it's still written by human. Do we really see this threat that we need to protect against AI creating our code base and no one from engineering team knows how it works?
I think it's pretty much emerging. I think you see it in many different places that teams are looking into how to use Claude Code. There's a lot of vibe coding going on. I just recently saw, it was like a couple of days ago, where I saw an article of a student writing his own operating system only with vibe coding. Stuff like this is happening, and as soon as it's there, it will also be used. And also companies are like investing massively into this. To be like all transparent, I drive a Mercedes, and I'm not very fond of this board computer thing. I don't think they're doing it pretty well. They're way advanced in this regard. I like the car. I love the car, but this is not like, I would say, the area of their biggest expertise. I'm convinced if you look into Tesla, they will push hard to actually use AI to be quicker with the development of their operating system of the Tesla cars. I don't know whether they're doing it at the moment, but I would be surprised if they were not. All the companies like AWS during reInvent in December showed their IDE, Cairo, I think is the name. It's basically like a developer editor, like an agentic enhanced developer editor. And that thing just like builds stuff for you. I've been trying around with these things with Claude Code just a couple of weeks back, and I think it's insane what drops out of this. I'm convinced that in the next year, we will see more and more teams emerging who really need to change also their agile development practices. Because nowadays, oftentimes software development goes in iterations, and oftentimes teams work for 2 weeks on a specific backlog, on a couple of tasks that they picked for themselves for these 2 weeks. Now, if you imagine that the same people are not implementing the code themselves anymore, but that they're specifying basically the outcomes, maybe for a day. And then you have code written in a couple of hours that is way more than what one person could produce in 2 weeks. Then you need to think about how do you control basically what drops out of this. So I think this whole software development process, or the software development processes as such, will need to evolve significantly in the next couple of months, actually, for many teams out there who want to leverage these agentic coding practices. And a lot of work will go into how do we specify, how do we scope the work, and how do we actually verify that what we initially specified also dropped out of the coding stage, right? And this basically means the teams will have to double down on their QA processes. You will have to have AI enhanced QA processes that also somehow show you that this was the actual requirement, and this is the part of the code, or this is the service, even the entire service that was built based on these requirements.
That's a really controversial because I'm old enough to remember when .NET 1.1 came in and everyone was freaked out about a few things. First is that if you need to deliver e-commerce, you don't need to code for months. You just can take some templates, extend security, whatever, and it takes weeks you to finish the e-commerce website rather than months before. And the second stuff, which feels kind of similar what you mentioned, is a completion, code completion. Because before that, you had to type, you had to know the syntaxes. And nowadays, fairly, if you will go and ask a lot of developers about the syntaxes, they can type while using IDE, but they might not write it with a piece of paper and pen with the style, because we're relying a lot on the EDE, which helps a lot. And AI feels kind of the same way. So it's pretty interesting topic, and I will put it as a card into the pocket to come back maybe in a year or half a year and see if it really works this way. But because for me, it feels like we already has been in this cycle. What changed? The expectations. Like engineers have to deliver more in the same period of time, but still the accountability on engineers. There is no project manager who will make AI accountable because computers can do the things. It's a tool, and the accountability is still on humans. But it's really interesting topic to explore. I think it's not the part of this episode because we're more on the security level, but that's really, really engaged me.
Doesn't matter what's happening, who is right here. It's by sure one step closer to the singularity. So we are on a good path here. Speaking about singularity, or speaking about the jumps and technology or technology threat. One of the threat people are seeing in cybersecurity, and everybody is now, it's super fancy to speak about this, is quantum jump, the quantum computing, and the end of what we know current cryptography. And everybody's afraid that it'll appear a computer. Theories are like Google are developing this quantum computer only because they want to control all the assets, all the crypto assets around the world. Speaking about the crypto, what do you think this post-quantum jump cryptography will look like? I have no idea how we will transition to this new world, honestly, but how it will look after. The cryptography how it will look, what kind of a mechanism we will use, how will people be secure, information, money will be secure. Maybe Boerse Stuttgart, or you are preparing for this jump, you know something we don't know, I don't know.
Already today, there are algorithms that are considered as quantum computing secure, so that they can protect that they're basically complicated enough, or that they run through mathematical algorithms that are so hard to crack that even quantum computers would take a very long time to crack them. That's already there. That said, I don't think that a lot of companies at the moment are putting an effort into using them. There is an official first draft of how a roadmap looks like for the post-quantum cryptography world. As mentioned, NIST released it, I think a year or two ago, which basically means you need to find all the different cryptographic items in your environment. That's what we've been looking at Boerse Stuttgart. Basically, just to create an initial inventory of okay, what are the things that would be relevant for quantum computing, or could be cracked basically by quantum computing. Not to speak about blockchains themselves, because I think if not most of them, if not all of them, are at the moment vulnerable to quantum computing, or would be able to be cracked, which would be an entirely different problem if that happened. So at some point in time, all the blockchains will have to implement post-quantum cryptography in that sense. But for companies, the first thing that we started to do was basically to start collecting, build up basically an inventory of all the the certificates that you're using throughout the entire company, all the different encryptions that we are using, to have this as an entire landscape, and to understand which of those things are actually could be vulnerable then to quantum computing. And then afterwards, the next step would basically be to change the algorithm through which you're calculating the private key. It's oftentimes about this key pair in cryptography, so that you have a mathematical pair of keys. One is public usually, so everyone can use it basically just to verify that certain information comes from a specific individual or party. And you have a private key that is always with the respective party. In terms of your crypto wallet, you have your private key that allows you to access the wallet. Others can identify the wallet through the public key, just to make it a little bit more tangible. cryptography that is already there, with the algorithms that are already there that can be used to protect yourself from quantum computing. Those algorithms can be used to actually protect the private key.
And finishing the topic basically for today, because we are speaking about the future, and because Igor placed a card in the pocket already about the future, how do you think in the next 3 or 5 years cybersecurity will look like? We will make maybe quantum jump, or it will be something different what we have today?
I don't dare to say whether we are like in the post-quantum world in 3 or 5 years from now. Could be. The actual issue is that we don't know when this is happening, right? I think what's at least for sure that in 3 years from now or 5 years from now, I would actually expect that this whole drift that we oftentimes see, like, that you have these shadow areas within IT where sometimes systems emerge or are purchased from people within the company and that are not entirely under control of cybersecurity, which still happens in many companies. I think there will be more and more tools on the market that help you identify this more quickly and really like get a grip on all the things that are happening within your company. A huge topic is, of course, identity management, identity and access management. Just because of the reasons mentioned throughout this episode, that there's just so many different tools that companies are using. I think there will be a further surge in companies that help you control this and make this visible and also react automatically to incidents. A lot of more AI built into the systems. So hopefully more efficient and faster reaction times for incidents. And I would suggest also for Igor's card, next time we meet in this podcast, I would suggest we agree on a specific product that I will build during the podcast until the end of the podcast, and then we will look at it, how powerful it is.
I think we have a new idea for a new framework for our podcast. Why not? Hackathons online. Great. Seems like 30 minutes is not sufficient for this to cover this topic. Igor, it's a signal that we need to cover this topic much more, and we need to dig into this because exist risks and exist business-related risks. Not only, I know someone can just heard some days ago, cybersecurity is for geeks. I mean, it's their duty to solve it somehow. No, it's a threat for all of us, and it's important for all the business. If you want to make money, you want to keep your money secure, your business secure, you have to pay attention on this. And by sure, not so many geeks are driving Mercedes. So
great company, great car, but I don't like the interface.
So we send a feedback to the Mercedes stakeholders. Anyways, thank you very much for coming today. We just on the surface, and that surface is super thin. We just touched it with the topic and the importance of this. And thank you very much, Dennis, for coming. It was a pleasure to hear your vision and to hear what you are speaking about. It's very important to raising this awareness about cybersecurity, that this is really, really important, mostly in fintech, mostly when you're doing working
everywhere
with crypto.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, I wish to you a lot of success in what you're doing. Let's meet in a year to see if we can make what you proposed. Wish to all of our guests, watchers, and listeners to have a productive week, to pay more attention on cybersecurity threats. Maybe to ask the cybersecurity officers or team to provide at least a report of the situation, what's happening in audit, what's happening inside of their product. At least they'll have a vision what needs to be done, because the market itself is increasing. I mean, much more companies appeared that are working or proposing tools for cybersecurity. Much more. This market is increasing not only by number of products but also by amount of money what's invested there. So it's a signal that we need to pay attention to it. Wish to all of you great week, and stay in touch with Fintech Garden Podcast. Please comment everything you think is important for you about this topic, and not only. Of course, subscribe to our channel. Of course, put like on this video, share this video. Let's disseminate this information via LinkedIn, via YouTube. And Dennis, once again, thank you very much. Igor, thank you very much for co-hosting.